controversy around the film began ever since we learned that there would be no Prince Charming because apparently he kissed her without consent, and also no woman needs a man to rescue her. The movie also used CGI for the seven dwarfs rather than actors because they thought using real people would be offensive.
I just wanted to go on this little baby rant about Rachel Zegler. She's the young woman that was cast as Snow White. It has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments. I mean, they've gone through various scandals with this girl.
No, I've been getting a little brushy about how do I feel? Let's address the elephant in the room.
Fastest way to tank your career, go out there and start running your mouth and trashing the original IP of the film you're in.
Right? She wants the privilege of insulting you, hating you, but then wants you to also show up to her Disney remake of the Snow White that she hates. She thinks we're predictably stupid on top of being racist and backwards and dumb.
She doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by seven weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
Not because she can't keep her mouth shut, but because she has this underlying anger and hatred in her that always has to take it like one step too far.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
We're not going to forget this. We're not going to your stupid little movie, okay? We'll be boycotting Snow White, okay? Our children will be boycotting Snow White. So first and foremost, if you're going to be cast as Snow White, maybe appreciate the original Snow White and don't do a tour talking about how, essentially implying that it's wrong and backwards and it's not 1937, whatever. Do you want to be Snow White or do you hate Snow White? Do you want to destroy Snow White?
I don't think they're gonna buy it. I don't think they're gonna watch it. I don't think they're gonna like it.
BBC said Disney Snow White has a major identity crisis.
That's you being mentally deranged because your action now needs to meet a consequence. You're a nasty piece of work.
I just have to note the smugness and superiority on this 23, 25, something like that, girl's face. Yeah, and a little bit of humility, you know? This is a story that's been around for a long, long time. You're not improving on it. So they took out the famous theme song, Someday My Prince Will Come, because it's not fair for a woman to live for love or want to find love or want to find a prince. They were not going to do that anymore, and they replaced it with the far more catchy song, this typical girl power anthem.
God forbid a woman dream about true love. We're all just sitting around here, I'm gonna make a big president one day. I hate men, I just want to be president.
And if she hadn't have opened her mouth, I think that this movie might have done well. They might have just been able to ride on the hopium of the movie and some well-cut trailers, and people would have paid to go see it, and then it would have fallen off when people knew it was garbage.
Rachel Zegler is a loudmouth dope.
Which is also, by the way, shows you how fundamentally stupid she is, because she doesn't even understand basic civics.
This truly is the worst casting, maybe, in the history of the film industry.
Every single one of these reviews is just absolutely brutal. And what you also need to know is that these are not politically driven reviews. I mean, most of them are from the camp that should be supporting Disney, that should be behind this new progressive take on Snow White, and yet they can't, because the film is apparently just that bad.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
Great. Okay? It's great. I'm honored. I don't know why I sound so angry right now. I'm honored. Am I a psychopath?
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
You know, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
Welcome back to Tea Time with Tina. Word online is Rachel Zegler goes completely nuts after Snow White is pulled from theaters. The flaming hot headline currently blowing up social media. If you thought this fiasco ended when Disney's remake bombed, you're missing out. Insiders say Rachel Zegler is on a full-blown rampage.
And Rachel decides to go on really just a psychopathic, demented rant. You've just been living in Hollywood, La La Land for so long that you're just deranged.
She was supposed to be Disney's golden girl, the fresh face of a timeless classic practically guaranteed to charm audiences worldwide. Just months ago, Rachel Zegler was on top of the Hollywood heap, handpicked to lead the Snow White remake, a project with a budget that could probably fund a small country. The hype was deafening, the expectations astronomical, but somewhere between the fairy tale promise and the box office reality, everything went spectacularly, almost unbelievably wrong. And now, instead of basking in the glow of a Disney blockbuster, Zegler finds herself in the eye of a storm, a self-made hurricane of public backlash, career-damaging headlines, and a box office bomb of epic proportions. The question isn't just what happened, it's how did it all unravel so catastrophically, so publicly?
This is her operating level of intelligence here, just so you know. Just her factory setting of intelligence is so low.
Disney, in their infinite wisdom, had placed a massive bet on Zegler. She was young, talented, and seemingly perfect to breathe new life into Snow White for a modern audience. The remake wasn't just another movie. It was supposed to be a cultural event, a nostalgia-fueled box office juggernaut. But from the very beginning, a subtle shift began to occur, a dissonance that would eventually amplify into a deafening roar of disapproval. Instead of gently updating a beloved classic, Zegler started to publicly dismantle it piece by piece, interview by interview. She didn't just want to modernize Snow White, she seemed determined to rewrite its very DNA, often with a tone that many interpreted as dismissive, even contemptuous, of the original 1937 masterpiece. It wasn't just about creative differences, it was about a perceived disrespect for the source material, and more importantly, for the millions who held that source material dear.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
The internet, of course, noticed, and it didn't take long for the initial excitement to morph into confusion, then frustration, and finally, outright anger. One minute, Zegler was praising the opportunity to reimagine a Disney icon. The next, she was dissecting the original Snow White as if it were some archaic relic, riddled with outdated ideas and cringe-worthy tropes. Fans, the very people Disney was counting on to flock to theaters, felt a growing sense of alienation. They saw a star who appeared to believe she was somehow above the legacy that had paved her path to stardom, a legacy that included generations of devoted fans and a film that had resonated for nearly a century. The honeymoon phase evaporated before the first trailer even dropped. Disney, oblivious or perhaps in denial, kept the marketing machine churning, seemingly unaware of the brewing storm of public opinion. They had poured over $250 million into this project, a staggering sum even for the House of Mouse. They were expecting a guaranteed hit, a nostalgic slam dunk. What they got instead was a masterclass in how to alienate your audience before the opening credits even roll.
It cost $270 million to make. $270 million.
When the box office numbers finally trickled in, they weren't just disappointing, they were devastating. Despite Disney's marketing blitz, despite the built-in name recognition, Snow White stumbled out of the gate with a dismal opening weekend, barely scraping together $43 million domestically. For a film with a $250 million budget, that wasn't just bad, it was a financial emergency. Insiders scrambled, damage control meetings were called, and the cold reality began to sink in. Breaking even, let alone turning a profit, was looking increasingly like a pipe dream. The final numbers painted a portrait of utter disaster. Snow White didn't just underperform, it cratered. It became a symbol of Hollywood hubris, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones across studio lots. And amidst this financial wreckage, Zegler seemed genuinely perplexed, almost offended that audiences hadn't embraced a movie she had spent months subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, criticizing. It was a masterclass in failing to read the room, a spectacular example of a star seemingly disconnected from the very audience she needed to win over.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
That story is Snow White. Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again, ever.
But this live-action remake is a giant fail. It is not doing well at the box office. When it comes to the Rotten Tomatoes score on this thing, even the critics are not in love with Disney's Snow White. It's clocking in at 44%.
Zegler's stated intention was to inject modern feminist sensibilities into the Snow White narrative. On paper, this wasn't necessarily a bad idea. Audiences are often receptive to updates, to fresh perspectives on classic stories, but her approach went beyond modernization. It ventured into outright revisionism, bordering on ridicule. She seemed to dismiss the very core elements that made Snow White a fairy tale in the first place: love, romance, and the idea of a Prince Charming. While some viewers might have been open to a nuanced evolution of these themes, Zegler's pronouncements often came across as dismissive and condescending. It felt less like a thoughtful reimagining and more like a wholesale rejection of everything that had charmed audiences for generations. Her constant insistence on moving past silly romance and focusing on, well, it was never entirely clear what she was focusing on beyond dismantling the original, It gave the impression that she had forgotten she was starring in a Disney fairy tale, not headlining a late-night comedy show designed to satirize them.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. But it's one of those things. So true, it's an inner journey that she goes on to find her true self, and she meets a lot of people along the way that make the journey really incredible.
Her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern day America must make that choice.
Critics, sensing the disconnect between the film's marketing and its stars' pronouncements, pounced. Reviews slammed Snow White for its lack of heart, its heavy-handed messaging, and its overall joylessness. The magic, the whimsical charm that defined Disney classics was conspicuously absent, replaced by what many described as a forced, preachy tone. When you factored in the astronomical marketing costs, the break-even point for Snow White ballooned to well over $500 million. It wasn't even close. Instead of striking gold with nostalgia, Disney had stumbled into a money pit so deep it could swallow a pirate ship whole. The entire fiasco became Exhibit A in the argument that you can't simply strip a fairy tale of its enchantment, replace it with a soapbox lecture, and expect a box office bonanza. And as the financial losses mounted, so did the rumors of behind-the-scenes turmoil. Whispers began to circulate about friction between Zegler and her co-star, Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen. Hollywood insiders painted a picture of a set fraught with tension, a battleground of conflicting egos and approaches. Gadot, a seasoned professional, was reportedly trying to maintain a positive atmosphere and keep the promotional fires burning, while Zegler continued to deliver edgy, often provocative sound bites that seemed to actively undermine the film's appeal. The contrasting approaches created a public relations nightmare for Disney, forcing them into a constant state of damage control. But the drama didn't stop there. In a move that baffled even seasoned Hollywood observers, Zegler apparently decided to amplify the chaos by posting comedic videos of herself mocking empty movie theaters. It was a bizarre, tone-deaf attempt at humor that landed with a resounding thud, further alienating audiences and fueling the already raging online firestorm. If she thought it would somehow endear her to the public, she was spectacularly wrong.
I mean, look at this right here. Snow White crashes 70% in second weekend box office. I seriously didn't know that things got this bad for this Rachel Zegler Snow White movie, but I'm reading this right now, and I'm worried about Rachel Zegler's career. I don't see how she comes back from this.
The online backlash intensified, morphing into a full-blown social media meltdown. Memes featuring Zegler in the Evil Queen's iconic attire proliferated across platforms, often accompanied by sarcastic captions and biting commentary. Every new interview, every new social media post from Zegler seemed to pour gasoline on the flames. Moderate fans, even those who initially gave her the benefit of the doubt, began to question her motives. Was she deliberately sabotaging the film? Was she intentionally burning every bridge in sight? Disney, according to reports, frantically ramped up their social media damage control efforts, but it was akin to trying to extinguish a raging wildfire with a water pistol. Tales of emergency PR meetings, heightened security measures for Gal Gadot, presumably to shield her from the fallout, and hush-hush memos about actual malice began to circulate like urban legends within the industry. Meanwhile, Zegler, seemingly oblivious to the escalating crisis, doubled down on her narrative. She insisted she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign, conveniently overlooking the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, she had played a significant role in steering the ship directly onto the rocks.
Friends? Not even close. E.T. has learned there has definitely been tension between Snow White leading ladies Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler, and they're, quote, not close by any.
Then came the truly ironic twist, the unforeseen consequence that nobody in Hollywood could have predicted. Rachel Zegler's catastrophic Snow White flop might actually be forcing a serious industry-wide reassessment of remake strategy in Tinseltown. Studio executives witnessing the spectacular implosion reportedly began to realize that there might be a limit to how much you can modernize or reimagine beloved classics before you lose the very audience that made those stories iconic in the first place. Anonymously sourced rumors, whispered in hushed tones after closed-door meetings, suggested that studios were actively rethinking their approach to future remakes, scaling back the overt, often preachy messaging in favor of, well, actually entertaining viewers. Suddenly, a bizarre narrative began to emerge. Rachel Zegler, through her very public and very spectacular failure, might have inadvertently saved Hollywood from itself. By crashing and burning so flamboyantly, she might have snapped the industry out of its habit of lecturing audiences and reminded them that at the end of the day, people go to the movies to escape, to be entertained, not to be lectured. Don't expect anyone to present her with a humanitarian award anytime soon, though. This savior narrative is mostly confined to amused boardroom discussions, where the bottom line, profit, is the only real metric of success.
Decided to film herself in a theater totally empty, giggling, tee-hee-heeing with total glee. Look at this. Look at this face. What can be said about this level of narcissism? Here, please, enjoy.
Meanwhile, back in the real world, Rachel Zegler is left to grapple with the career-damaging fallout. Headlines screamed about her meltdown, her disaster, her box office poison status. Rumors, again anonymously sourced but persistently circulating, suggested that Zegler's backstage behavior during the Snow White production was even more volatile than her public persona suggested. She reportedly confronted top Disney executives demanding to know why they weren't defending her more vigorously, seemingly oblivious to the fact that her own words were the source of the problem. Some whispered of a near tantrum at a private industry event when high-level execs politely, or perhaps not so politely, avoided her. Instead of engaging in any introspection or acknowledging the public perception of her actions, she reportedly doubled down on the "I'm right, they're wrong" attitude, effectively torpedoing any lingering goodwill that might have remained. Even previously, sympathetic fans started to cringe at her increasingly erratic social media rants, where she continued to champion her modern approach and dismiss critics as backward or envious. Hollywood watchers began to label her public unraveling as the stuff of legend, a textbook example of how not to handle a PR crisis, a cautionary tale for aspiring stars and seasoned veterans alike.
And how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her." And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, "Good job, Rachel." And then she, like minutes later, followed it up with, "And never forget, free Palestine."
And isn't her co-star Jewish?
Yes, Gal Gadot, whatever.
I mean, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
She's Jewish, and apparently this actually all hell broke loose. Gal started getting threats.
Word on the street is that Zegler remains convinced she will stage a triumphant comeback, that she will speak her truth and somehow win back the audience she alienated. She seems to believe that the public simply hasn't understood her vision, completely missing the point that the audience she insulted might not care to hear it anymore. Imagine being a Disney PR representative right now. Your entire day is consumed by firefighting, constantly extinguishing blazes sparked by the film's own leading lady. Every new Zegler rant, every new interview generates another wave of memes, outraged tweets, and baffled headlines. Disney reportedly threw everything at the problem. Ramped up marketing, hushed phone calls with journalists, maybe even a desperate sprinkle of pixie dust. But the box office crater only deepened. The usual Disney synergy, the seamless integration of a major release into theme parks, toy lines, and celebratory events was conspicuously absent. Even the normally relentless hype machine seemed to grind to a halt, unable to spin positive narratives around a movie whose star publicly mocked its core appeal. Even Bob Iger himself, in carefully worded statements, subtly distanced Disney from the messaging controversy, reiterating that their mission was to entertain, not send messages.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
Oh my God.
And I can only hope.
What does that mean?
That despite my flaws And despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
A leaked tidbits and industry gossip even hinted at script changes demanded mid-shoot. Changes presumably intended to align with Zegler's personal stances and interpretations of the Snow White story. Whether these rumors are entirely accurate or simply amplified by the surrounding chaos remains unclear, but they undeniably fueled the narrative that Zegler had taken a wrecking ball to a beloved classic, reshaping it in her own image regardless of audience desires. As Snow White vanished from theaters, leaving behind a trail of red ink and bewildered executives, Disney quietly moved on to other projects, hoping that audiences would eventually forget this particular fiasco. The only lingering question was how many more times Rachel Zegler would publicly put her foot in her mouth before the dust finally settled, and whether there would be anything left of her career when it did. While Zegler attempted to make light of the empty theaters with awkward jokes, the internet returned the favor 100-fold. Parody TikToks lampooned her interviews, exaggerating her perceived haughtiness and self-importance. Tweets labeled her Snow Woke and Rachel Regretler. Meme lords gleefully photoshopped her face onto every Disney villain imaginable, from the evil queen herself to Maleficent and Ursula. Think about it. Publicly dissing an 86-year-old classic, a film cherished by multiple generations, is practically begging to be digitally dragged through the mud. Fans and even casual observers watched in morbid fascination as Zegler seemingly doubled down on her controversial stances, marveling at the spectacle of a star so intent on mocking the very audience she needed to embrace her film. Critics across the spectrum, from conservative to liberal, agreed on one thing. Zegler's attitude came across less as empowered actress and more as arrogant performer completely ignoring reality. Whether she was aiming for edgy, comedic, or simply misunderstood, her tone-deaf routine ignited social media like a 4th of July fireworks display, albeit a very, very critical one. The Snow White saga, more than the movie itself, became the year's top source of comedic fodder, overshadowing any actual discussion of the film's merits or lack thereof. In the face of this overwhelming negativity, Zegler continues to insist she is under siege, spouting vague allegations of a meticulously orchestrated takedown. She claims the media selectively amplified her worst moments, that Disney abandoned her to the wolves, and that shadowy trolls and online saboteurs intentionally torpedoed the film's success. While there might be grains of truth in some of these accusations, Hollywood politics are notoriously complex and often Machiavellian. The simpler and perhaps more obvious explanation is often overlooked. She spent months publicly criticizing a beloved story, and the fans, understandably, didn't appreciate being lectured about their antiquated tastes. A star's primary job, especially in a franchise film like Snow White, is to sell the movie, to generate excitement, to connect with the audience. It's decidedly not to dunk on the source material and alienate the very people you're trying to attract. Sure, there might be underlying industry machinations at play, there usually are. The film reportedly went significantly over budget, partly due to production shifts and DEI-related casting decisions. Remember the controversy surrounding the reimagining of the dwarfs? But even these factors likely would have been manageable, or at least less catastrophic, if Zegler hadn't continuously fanned the flames of controversy with her relentless social media outbursts and tone-deaf interviews. Some fringe conspiracy theories even suggest that Disney deliberately sabotaged the film as some kind of elaborate tax write-off or strategic maneuver. But come on. Nobody in their right mind invests $250 million just to intentionally sabotage themselves. So, here we stand. Snow White has been quietly yanked from theaters, the financial losses are staggering, and Rachel Zegler's once bright brand is in tatters, seemingly overnight. The burning question on everyone's mind in Hollywood and beyond is this a career death sentence, a permanent stain on her record, or just a brutal, albeit very public, wake-up call? Hollywood is known for its redemption arcs, its ability to forgive and forget, but those comebacks usually require a hefty dose of humility, a genuine display of remorse, something Zegler has yet to publicly demonstrate. Still, a carefully crafted apology tour, a strategically chosen role in a critically acclaimed project, could potentially work miracles provided she dials down the ego and starts listening to rather than lecturing her audience. But with her track record of unfiltered pronouncements and her apparent inability to recognize the role she played in this unfolding disaster, many insiders remain skeptical. They swear there's even more to this dumpster fire than what's been publicly revealed. secret onset meltdowns, non-disclosure agreements locking lips shut, and maybe even a few hush-hush payoffs to keep the really juicy details buried. If you're hungry for every last drop of this Hollywood tea, if you crave the behind-the-scenes secrets and the next dramatic twist in this unfolding saga, then hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell. Because if this Snow White fiasco has taught us anything, it's that Rachel Zegler's roller coaster ride is far from over. In a land where success is king and image is everything, she has become a cautionary tale, an unintentional comedic goldmine, and a stark reminder that even in Hollywood, actions and especially words have very real and very public consequences. The meltdown, it seems, will continue to simmer, and the next dramatic twist in the Rachel Zegler story could be just around the corner. Thanks for watching, and be sure to drop your opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, stay tuned, stay safe, and stay informed.